Welcome to the Self-Publishing School podcast. This is the podcast to listen to if you're an aspiring writer or an author who wants to be more successful. On this show, you'll learn how to write and launch a book successfully, all from the top authors and people just like you who are doing it at the highest level. I'm your host, Chandler Bolt, the founder of Self-Publishing School, the author of the book called Published, and the CEO of selfpublishing.com. For free training on how to publish a book that sells 10,000 copies, go to selfpublishing.com/free training. Hey, Chandler Bolt here, and joining me today is Brian Dixon. Brian is the author of a book called Start With Your People. He helps entrepreneurs, authors, and business owners grow their impact and income by simplifying the marketing process, because the world doesn't need more complicated marketing.
That's right.
Brian, welcome. Great to have you here.
Chandler, good to see you.
So today, guys, we're going to talk about a few things. We're talking about traditionally publishing a book, getting in advance, selling copies, simplifying your marketing, a lot of that stuff. I want to start, Brian. Why did you decide to write this book? And looking on Amazon, I don't think it was your first book, but it was kind of your first more mass market book.
That's right. Yeah.
So what was the thought behind this?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think one of my favorite sayings is document, don't create. And the idea is that we're doing good work in the world already. And what often happens is what our battle scars, what we learn to do the hard way becomes easy to us over time. Or what I often say is that it's your obvious magic. What's obvious to you is magic to other people. And so for me, Start With Your People was just kind of one of those obvious things. As a very driven entrepreneur, an Enneagram 3, kind of take the world by storm, right? Focusing so much on growth and profit and things like that. One of the things that I'm involved in is a membership site called Hope Writers, which is mostly a female-based writing community. And as like the growth guy, I had to learn over about 5 years through a lot of struggle, how do I stay exactly who I am as this like growth guy, like focused on numbers and still have a soul and still have a heart. And I got to tell you, like, I failed so many times. You can relate, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I failed so many times. I mean, hurt feelings, broken relationships, people quitting because I was too hard on them or too driven. And it really showed itself in the company, but also as I started to look back, I realized actually this has been a theme and a pattern throughout my whole life is sort of like being so focused on the results and missing the relationships. And so I was working with a business coach, which I think is a really good idea. If you don't have a coach, work with a coach. And I was working with this business coach and he said, if you really want to take your life to the next level, do a 360 assessment. And I'd never even heard of that. I'm sure your listeners are now familiar, but essentially you're sending out an anonymous survey to people that are in your world and just asking them, what do you see? What's the good? What's the bad? What's the ugly? Like, what do you see in my life? So I sent that out. I had 50 plus people reply, all anonymously. So I still don't know who replied. And there was this consistent theme that even though Brian's awesome, even though we love Brian, there's just this edge. There's this edge that doesn't put people first and we feel it and it's gross. And Chandler, that was a slap in the face and a punch in the gut. And I knew things had to change. And that's really where the book started, was on that journey of introspection and repairing relationships.
It's almost like you were writing the book as a quest. Almost like, I feel like Malcolm Gladwell does this. Yeah. It's like, okay, I really want to learn this thing. All right, I'm going to really learn this thing and I'm going to write a book about the journey and write the book about what I learned.
100%. Yeah. And so the book was it was a powerful cathartic experience to write the book because I had to live the book. And I think the best books are the ones that we've already lived, but we're continuing to live. And so it's kind of one of those books that I go back to and I go, okay, how do I clean up that relationship again? I think especially as highly driven entrepreneurs, we're sort of like, what they say, you have to crack eggs to make an omelet. Like we're constantly putting things out there in the world that are subject to misinterpretation. And so we have to find ways of navigating the relationships while we're also navigating revenue.
Oh, interesting. You have to crack eggs to make an omelet. I love that quote. How'd you land on this specific topic? I know you said, I mean, you talked about the why behind the topic as a whole, but I guess more from the the business, the publishing deal, all that kind of
That's right.
brain. How
Yeah.
did you narrow in on this specific book topic?
Yeah.
For
Someone else saw it in me. And I think often that happens in our life, that we think that we should do this one certain thing. But if we look around and we ask the people in our life, what are you seeing in me? It's my favorite thing to do. And I'd recommend that each of you listening right now, go on your Instagram or on your Facebook and simply say, hey, I was listening to a podcast and the guy recommended that I just ask, what am I good at? Just ask, like, what am I good at? And let all your friends and the people that you like are connected to you, like, let them tell you what they see. And so for me, at Hope Writers, we're hosting a conference. We had editors and agents at the conference. And one of the agents at lunch came up to me afterwards and said, Brian, I have a book idea for you. Like, I see that you're a guy in a mostly female space and you are focused on growth and sales, but also I can tell that you're compassionate. I can tell that you have a heart. And I think a business book with a heart would be a good thing to put into the market. So it was really Lisa's idea. Lisa Jackson at Alive Literary. It was her idea. Then I worked with her to put together the book proposal. We pitched a 2-book deal. So one book still forthcoming. It would be my next book with them, would be about goal setting and accomplishing your dreams, because I was in a big car accident and have kind of that recovery story. And then the first book was really about putting people first in your life.
Got it. And was that the book that you thought that you were going to write going into that, or did you have an idea about a different book that you'd write and you swapped to that?
Yeah, that's a good question. The one that I was most excited about was the working title still is How to Do Your Impossible, that we all have the script in our mind of like the things that are impossible. And of course, we can overcome that. Of course, we write our mindset and our script. And so that was like the one that the publisher got really excited about. It was really interesting. And I'm totally open to talk about like how the deal structure worked and everything like that. Because I had thought about, I have self-published before. I think there's a really clear path to self-publishing and the advantages of that. This deal there was a bidding war. We had 7 publishers that were interested in the project. It was like, the money got to a point and the support got to a point where it just didn't make any sense for me to do it by myself when we had a really cool opportunity.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. I mean, the decision, but I guess maybe first off, how did you decide between traditional and self-publishing? And then I want to get into the mechanics of how you sparked the bidding more, got a big advance, all that stuff.
I think some of it goes all the way. I mean, if you want to get really deep, I think it has to do with imposter syndrome. I think it has to do with the fact that we all have this. I'm just going to share my story, but I'm sure y'all listening can relate. It's like we have these ideas in our mind about what we're entitled to and what we're not allowed to. And so I grew up as a preacher's kid. We grew up really didn't have a lot of money, didn't have a lot of opportunity, if you will. And so I always kind of had this chip on my shoulder of like, not really feeling like I fit in and not really feeling like I was accepted, especially when it came to any kind of like being the cool kid or having an opportunity. And so as I started like wanting to share my message with the world online, I started pitching books. I used to be a classroom teacher. So my first year as a classroom teacher, I wrote this teen devotional book, like a proposal for a teen devotional book called Daily Living in the Lion's Den. It was all about 12-year-old, 14-year-old boys who would it was like a Bible study thing. And I pitched it to all the big Christian publishers. And I just got form letter after form letter after form letter and just rejection. So I think the rejection over a year, and I mean, that was my first project I pitched, but I probably had through maybe 14 years of education as a teacher, I probably pitched 3 or 4 different, completely different book ideas, never considering self-publishing, thinking the only way to be a credible author is to have a book in a bookstore with Zondervan or Tyndale on the cover. And so I just rejection. And then it's kind of like the thing, like when you're not even trying to go for it, you're not even thinking about it, then the opportunity appears. And so all of a sudden I, just doing my work in the world and building Hope Writers and building my platform and things like that, all of a sudden it's like right in front of me. It's like the thing that I wanted for so long. And so I think I got really excited. It was a good deal. And I got really excited about the opportunity to finally be picked. I've since learned, like, I'm totally James Altucher, like, choose yourself. Like, I think that we have such a huge opportunity now that we don't necessarily need a traditional publisher, but at least at the time it made the most sense for me and for our family.
Got it. That makes sense. And so let's talk about the path to getting the book deal and the advance and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you met a literary agent at your conference.
Yep.
Decided to work with her. What did that process look like from even picking a literary agent up to getting the advance? And how did you spark that bidding war where you said there's, I think, 7 bids?
It was really fun. It was probably my favorite part of the whole journey was like, okay, so Lisa and I met in October, November, and then we decided to work together over a couple Zoom calls, and I'm friends with people that are already her clients, so she came highly vetted. Worked together on putting together a book proposal. So I went really deep on what makes a good book proposal. Fortunately, as a co-founder of Hope Writers, I had a great network, so I could talk to people who are experts at book proposal writing, but many of them have courses. So going through training, putting together a very compelling book proposal. And what I learned, if you're trying to pitch a traditional publishing deal, you have to spend probably 70% of your book proposal on the marketing plan. The marketing plan is the most important thing, the platform and the promotion. That's the most important aspects of a book proposal. So it was kind of light on content and really heavy on marketing strategy, which really set me apart from other authors. A lot of authors are allergic to marketing. I love marketing. So we worked together, mostly me, but at least we give feedback from October through January. It was done by January 15th, ready to pitch. It was a PDF nonfiction book proposal, probably 40 to 60 pages long. And then she just went and did her thing. She's built a network. For one of the advantages of working with an agent is she knows everybody and everybody knows her. And so it's just emails. I mean, she's just sending nice warm emails to people saying, hey, got this really exciting opportunity. And I mean, the email that she sent to them was like, what they say, like the old proverb says, like, don't sing your own praises, let somebody else do that. And that's what she did. I mean, she talked me up to these publishers. And as a result, they were interested in the idea because of her, but then they were interested in the book because of the marketing plan. I had a big email list because I was able to sort of combine a couple of businesses that I was involved in and say, hey, we're all going to get behind this thing. So the email list was really significant, and in the several hundred thousands, like it was a lot of email driving that we could do. And sort of the golden ticket to book marketing, at least in the minds of traditional publishers, is your email list, at least at that time. So the email list got their attention. The book concept was pretty strong. The marketing plan was really solid. I kind of threw the kitchen sink at the whole thing. And then I just worked to the bone, getting that thing off the ground.
Hey, Chandler Bolt here. I hope you're loving this episode so far. It's time to go from inspiration to implementation. All right, so if you've learned something, we want to help you implement what you've learned with your book. So what I want you to do right now is go to selfpublishing.com/schedule, book a publishing consultation with one of the experts on my team. We'll talk about your goals for your book, your dreams, your challenges, your next steps, and we'll start putting together a plan. All right, so go to selfpublishing.com/schedule, book a call with the team. Let's see how we can help with your book. It's time to implement. Yeah. And so what would you say for authors who are thinking about doing a book proposal, which, guys, we've got a great episode on Self-Publishing School podcast about how to create a book proposal with Chad Allen.
Yeah, Chad's great. Chad was one of the friends that gave me advice. Yeah,
I figured so.
Yeah.
And so what would you say are the top 2 or 3 things that you spoke to in the marketing portion of that book proposal that spoke the most to publishers and got their interest?
Yes. The opt-in strategy, like the book bonuses, meant a lot to them. So the pre-launch book bonus strategy. So if you order the book before publication day, you're going to get, and I threw so much at that. So as a course creator, I owned a company that created courses. You're going to get access to all 4 of these courses. It's $1,500 worth of value, all that stuff. So book bonuses is huge. And then the influencer strategy is really big. The way that I did influencer strategy is I actually actually hosted niche summits. So it was sort of the idea of like, I'm sure we're all familiar now with the virtual summit kind of concept, where I served as the interviewee or interviewer with 12 interviewees in different niches. So I did one literally on like the HR summit. And so I interviewed all these HR experts from big companies. And then the exchange was they're going to tell their company about the summit because they look good, because they want their company to know the work that they're doing. And then if they bought the all access pass, then they get a copy of the book. So it was kind of like a Trojan horse strategy. Come for the summit, and then you get the book kind of as a bonus. And I don't think the publishers had seen anything like that. It was just real kind of strategic. And so they're really impressed by it. And I think some of them just wanted me to be on the team because they could learn from, if this works, then we can apply this to all of our other authors as well. So I think bringing some innovation to the table. So if you're pitching a book right now, like your book proposal absolutely must have the word TikTok in it. Like if you don't mention the platform that's scaling, the platform that's making the biggest impact right now, like it just looks like you don't know what you're doing. And so at the time for us, it was like virtual summits were really the thing. So I really leaned into where the market was going, not where the market was.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. And I would imagine, well, I love to focus on distribution, right? Which is who is the audience that's going to buy the book? We talked about, in my new book, I talk about the 4 Ps, right? The person, pain, promise, price. So who's the person that you're writing this book to? And that helps you write a better book. But also in this case, it's like, okay, who is buying this book? Well, one bucket of that would be HR professionals. Okay, how do we get in front of HR professionals virtual? So you've got the distribution, you get the audience, and you've got the distribution mechanism, which makes for a really great way to sell books. Which I think is super, super smart. So that's kind of what to include in the book proposal. She sends out the warm email. She sings your praises. How did you go from there to 7 publishers interested, and what did the bidding process look like?
That's right. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. So much of our world here, whenever you're pitching something, is like hurry up and wait. And so it was kind of hurry up, get the book proposal together, and then she sends emails and we just wait. And then what she was pitching wasn't the book. She was pitching a meeting with me. And so then I took meetings. I think we had maybe 12 meetings, which was awesome. That's one of the advantages of working with a literary agent. She has the relationships. And then on the meeting, I sold, quote unquote, sold the book. Like I literally put together sort of like a perfect webinar strategy where I was just walking them through, like, these are the 3 reasons that this book is timely. It's a perfect fit for your house, and why basically I'm gonna outwork every other author. Like, I really think that the reason they were so interested was because I was bringing a level of just drive and hustle to like selling the book. Like all these meetings, we barely talk about the content of the book. We just talked about how to market and sell the book. So I think I felt like I was like such a purple cow in this industry at the time that I just had such enthusiasm about it, right? Nobody cares as much about your book as you do. And so you have to show them that you care. And the 2 ways to measure any level of care is time and treasure. And so I showed them I was basically dedicating an entire year to marketing the book. And also I was putting significant dollars, advertising dollars and affiliate money as well, because all the summits had affiliate strategy. I was investing my time and my treasure into getting this book off the ground. And so I think them seeing that, they're like, you couldn't help but my enthusiasm was contagious. And so as long as they could get their CFO on board and the numbers made sense, then they put an offer in. I think that's why we had so many offers.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. Really, really smart. I like the way that you pitched the meeting, not the book. I think that's a good takeaway for people. And then you use the meeting to pitch the book. And then sales is a transfer of enthusiasm, right?
100%.
I'm trying to keep up with, all the amazing acronyms and metaphors and examples.
I love it.
So how'd you go from 12 meetings to 7 offers?
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of just alluded to that, but anything else that you would share there?
I think it's really about like wanting it. Like, just because we had 12 meetings, I didn't act as if I had 12 meetings. I acted as if every single meeting was the only meeting. And so if you act like it's the only meeting, then you're going to work harder. You're going to go deeper. And so I was able, in a non-creepy way, I was able to like ask one of the editors about his kid and ask about, hey, tell me a little bit more about that project that you guys did 6 months ago. Like I stalked them on LinkedIn. I read the annual report. I mean, most publishers are putting out annual reports, especially if they're a nonprofit, they have to file documentation. If they're publicly traded, they have to file documentation. So there's ways to get information about the publisher. You can look up their most recent successes and some of their failures. So there's so much research that you could do. So I really showed up knowing exactly who is going to be in the room, what is their role. And so none of it was introductory. I was really bringing my A game. And maybe a tip there is like, assume you're on the team. I think one of the best strategies, I've seen you do it, and I do it as well. Like if I show up to a conference, like I'm going to assume I already work at the conference. Like I'm already on the team. And so let me add value. I want to be at a +1. I want to add value wherever I am. And I want to assume the yes. Like there's no such thing as no, right? No is just a yes later. So just assume the yes, and let's assume we're moving forward. How can we work together? So I wasn't really pitching the book. I was showing them what it's like to work with me. And I think that's what that transfer of enthusiasm, that's what got them so excited, because they're like, if he shows up like this to our first call, how is he going to show up when we have our big negotiation about what the book cover looks like? And it's true. Like when we did go from 12 meetings to 7 offers, 2 of them had to combine because they were owned by the same company. So we ended up getting 7 offers, but then it ended up being 5. Then we kind of pushed on him a little bit. It was a 1 book deal. My agent pushed on him as much as you can, which is one of the advantages of having an agent, is because she can take care of his kind of the business stuff. So she's able to push on him a little bit and say, hey, listen, we've got this offer at this price point. This offer is a 2 book. What if we combine the 2? And so she basically repitched the offer, which was, here's the minimum threshold of what the book would go for in terms of advance. Here's the minimum threshold of the royalty percentage. And then here is and it has to be at least 2 books. And so then we were in the driver's seat, because then we could go back to the 5 and say, listen, it has to be 2 books, has to be north of, I don't mind saying 100K a book. And it has to be whatever the royalty rate was, but it's a pretty high one for a traditional published book. And so then we went from 5 down to 3, and then the 3 sort of put in their best and final offer. And that was a fun day. I think Julie and I were both traveling. We were like in one of those airport lounges, and we're like, the numbers came in. We're like, oh my goodness. And it was really fun. At that point, it made sense to work with 2. And it was just about the relationship with the editor at that point. So I said yes to Zondervan, working with Stephanie Smith over there, who's now at Baker. This world is very transitory. But yeah, she was a great editor and really got the vision of what we were trying to do with the book.
Got it. And you said yes to a 2 book deal or 2 publishers?
2 book deal. 2 book deal with 1 publisher. Yeah.
Got it. So 2 book deal with 1 publisher. And it sounds like you had a deadline of a date for them to submit their best and final by.
That's right. Yeah.
And then did you go in person or virtual meetings?
No, it was all on Zoom. Yeah. Okay. There weren't any in-person meetings.
Got it. And I know did you kind of batch the process? I know a lot of times people will say, all right, I'm going to New York and I'm taking all my meetings on one day, and they know that I'm coming from another publisher, and then they've got to submit their thing by this day. Like, did you do any of that, or how did you?
I love that. If I did it again, that's how I would do it. Yeah. We just did Zoom at that point, but yeah, Lisa managed most of the process, but essentially it was like, because you think about the influence triggers, right? You have to have some urgency and some scarcity. So it was clear that there was like a window in order to put your offer in. And so I think because there was such enthusiasm. Now, if there wasn't enthusiasm about the book, it would have been a much longer process. But I think because the enthusiasm was there, we were able to compress it, and it worked in our favor.
Got it. Yeah. If we're talking, because I know we're really zooming in on this advanced piece, but I think just something that would be really, really helpful for people. It's just such a mystery to so many people. Yeah. So any other final tips learned from that process of getting a big advance on your first book?
The challenge, if I had a time machine, the one thing that I would tell myself, because this was 3 years ago, the one thing I would tell myself is, like this is a business, and negotiation, it's almost like you have to feel like a good negotiation. Everybody feels like they got a little bit of a haircut. Like everybody feels like they gave up a little too much. And that actually often leads to the best deal. And so for me, I felt like I gave up my life for a year, which is really, really valuable, right? Like that was my number one focus, was launching the book. And in the same way, the publisher felt like we're throwing a big advance at him. And so we've got to put our resources in. And so I think that's the number one kind of argument for like pushing the publisher as much as you can. It was way out of my comfort zone because I felt like I was cheating them. Like I felt like I was stealing from them, maybe going to some of my like church roots or something. Like I just felt like that kind of money and that kind of advantage just didn't make sense for me. And so I wanted to earn it. And so but I also think I needed that kind of investment so that I would like really work hard to make it happen.
Yeah.
And then the second thing I would say is like, just do the best you can and trust God with the results, right? At the end of the day, we can have the best marketing plan in the world. And I would put up, I mean, we haven't ever put it anywhere publicly, but like, it's a really solid marketing plan for the book. And the book still did what it did, right? There were still errors along the way. I think it was maybe priced the wrong way. There were a couple things that happened in terms of how it was launched. But so we never will reach the level of expectation, but what I can put my head on the pillow knowing that I did the best that I could with what I knew and what I had at the time.
Yeah. It's, I was interviewing Michael Hyatt, and he talked about how it's kind of like similar to a bank. If he's like, if you loan $10,000 from the bank, you work for the bank. If you loan $10 million from the bank, the bank works for you.
That's right.
Because they can't afford to default on that, right? And so similarly, his takeaway is, I think, exactly what you're saying, which is you get a tiny advance from a publisher, you work for the publisher. If you get that number up big enough, they work for you, because they have to have this book go well. And I
had a weekly meeting with that in mind. I had a weekly meeting with them 3 months leading to the pub date, a weekly meeting where the higher up people on the team were showing up to those weekly meetings that I was running. Like I had their full attention all the way until the book came out. Now, the one thing that I've heard so many times before, but it still hit me like a slap in the face, is about 10 days after the book comes out, you're dead to them. Like you're done. Like there's this window of launch. And once you're past window of launch, unless your book hits the moon, you're kind of done. Like they tried, they did everything they could, and now it's time to move on, and they move on to the next project. And that felt a little like, wait, it's kind of like, I guess if you're like in a traveling band, you show up to the town and you build relationships with everybody for the festival or whatever. And then the festival's over, like they move on. And so that part felt a little cold, but that's just the way the business is.
Yeah. What were the top 2 or 3 things that sold the most books?
Yeah, that is a really good question. I think one of the best things that I did, which I believe that you're a part of, is just I made a list of all the people that I like and I respect in our industry, and I was personal. I think personal makes such a difference. So we went really deep on the personal thing because it was all about people. Start with your people. So I had this graphic of these avatars on the front of the book. And it was just like people, all these little avatar people, like we're making an arrow. And the essential concept is when you get people right, the profits come. Like that's the basic idea of the book. And so instead of using these like stock avatars, these little animated, graphics of the people, we customize them. And so literally every single person on the cover is a real life person that I know, somebody in our industry, which is kind of cool because you can kind of zoom in and go, oh, it looks like that person. And then what I did is I had them printed, put them in a frame, mailed them to the people that have made a difference in my life, and gave them 2 copies of the book with a framed avatar and a nice handwritten note. And first of all, that was like, that felt so just like impactful, and like it just meant a lot. It meant a lot to me. It meant a lot to the people that received it. Not everybody, but a lot of people like reciprocated with, thanks for taking the time. Thanks for doing that. Thanks for noticing. And like, I thank them for the impact they had on my life. That made a big deal. And so number one is just personally fulfilling, but then number 2, it did open doors. You mentioned Mike Hyatt gave me a huge shout out on pub day. Was it because I sent him this custom note and this avatar and everything? Maybe, but maybe not. But I think it's all about relationship. And so what I learned from the book publishing process is that I was sort of almost like kind of cashing in on the investments that I'd made over years. And that never really stops. We're constantly making investments in people, and we want to do them favors and they want to do us favors. And so I think that was a really rewarding part, is like just building industry level relationships with people so that when you really need them, they really come through.
That's awesome. That's great advice. So let's see. Last couple of questions I have.
Yeah.
Is what's been the business impact of this book? How has this book grown the business or grown some of the speaking that you're doing?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that the book has done is establish that level of credibility. There's nothing quite like somebody having a copy of your book, kind of skimming through it. They don't even have to read the whole thing, but like kind of holding on to it and going, I can trust this guy. And so I think that's the number one reason you should have a book, is because it builds know, like, and trust faster than almost any other tool that's out there. So that is 100% true, whether you self-publish the book or you work with a traditional publisher. So it opened doors for speaking, it opened doors for coaching, and it opened doors for consulting, which is what I'm all about, right? I'm mostly a business coach. I love working with people and helping them make progress. And to get on a call and the first words out of their mouth is, I loved your book, I already know I'm working with somebody who's going to be a lifelong client, which is really, really powerful. So that's like kind of the relationship impact and also the financial impact. And I also think what I was able to do, it's kind of like the Henry Ford, where he's doing the Model Ts, and as he's doing that, they have the byproduct of the charcoal, and they spin off a secondary company, Kingsford Coal, as a result of the way they smelt the metal for the Model Ts. I think in the same way, as we launch our book, as we go through that process, it's not just about the book, but it's about the ancillary businesses that we can launch as a result of it, because we have experience launching a book. So I think the book launch process itself has made me a lot more credible when it comes to our core company, which is Hope Writers, our membership community of writers who want to make progress, because I have the battle scars and I have the war stories of launching a book that I can share with them, and they can trust me because I know what it's like to be where they are.
Yeah, that's great. Brian, what would be your parting piece of advice, kind of knowing what you know now?
Yes.
And from it's to the Brian of a few years ago before going on this journey, and to all the other Brians who are thinking about going on the journey of their first book.
I love it. Don Miller said a long time ago, peak at 65. So the exercise that I like to think about is, imagine that you're 81 years old, you're in your 80s, you're in your 90s, your life is basically done. Like, you just maybe got a couple years left, but you're kind of near the end of your life. And you're packing up your home, your condo, and you're moving into that retirement facility. And in your home, there's a shelf. Of all the bookshelves, there's one shelf, and it's your life's work. I want you to know that there's not only one book on that shelf. And so get the book written, get the book published. If you self-publish it, that's great too, because there's another book ahead. We have a whole lifetime to build a lifetime of work. And so even if your first book didn't do quite as well as you thought it would, or you're really excited about the book that you have right now, like, get the book done and then move on, because you are building a body of work over a lifetime. And all of that, what's the verse? Do not despise the small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin. Don't get mad at yourself for being a beginner. Keep making progress. Don't give up. Keep making progress. And over time, you're going to build a body of work that you're really proud of, and it makes a huge impact in people's lives.
That's awesome. Brian, you're the man. Where can people go to buy your book and to find out more about what you're up to?
Amazing. I'm really easy to find. Brian Dixon, briandixon.com. Just start with my website. We've got some tools and some free resources there for you that will help you make progress.
Awesome. Brian, thank you.
Thanks, Chandler.
Thank you so much for watching or listening to this episode of the Self-Publishing School podcast. I know there's so many places that you can be spending your time. There's other podcasts that you could be listening to, YouTube channels that you could be watching. So thank you so much. It means the world. Now, I want you to do 3 things right now if you found this episode helpful. All right, number 1, I don't know if you know this, but we've got a YouTube channel. It's a companion channel to this podcast. All the video versions of the episode are on the YouTube channel. So number 1, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Number 2, if you're listening to this podcast wherever, whether this is Spotify, Apple Podcasts, number 2, I want you to subscribe to this podcast right now so you don't miss a future episode. And then number 3, this is probably the most important, leave a review on the podcast. All right, reviews are super important and help this podcast get discovered by other people. So number 3, leave a review on the podcast. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next episode. If you're on the fence about scheduling a publishing consultation call with my team, maybe you're not quite ready for that, I've got some free training that I think will be really helpful for you. All right, all you have to do is go to register to sign up. Go to selfpublishing.com/free training. When you do, you're also going to get a free digital copy of my new book, Published. And on that training, you're going to learn the next steps, so how to implement with your book. So how to write, how to publish, how to launch successfully. So go to register right now at selfpublishing.com/free training. I'll see you there.